All right. Well, welcome everyone to Next Level Entrepreneur. You guys, this is one of my favorite groups because it's entrepreneurs, and every week I'm afforded the opportunity to bring in someone who has just really, really proven themselves as an entrepreneur. Now, the reason I say that is because a lot of times we have people that claim to be entrepreneurs. We have people that are entrepreneurish, and then we have people that are true entrepreneurs. They've done the work. They're constantly out there building, creating, and there's three things that I look at for an entrepreneur. One, have they created something uh, and taken from concept to reality? Have they built it and learned how to scale it? And then have they created sustainability? Those three things are really paramount for me. And so when I'm talking to people, when I'm out meeting people, it's always such a great time to just be able to connect with really cool people. And many of you guys have known this story, but Dr. Taubman and I, we met through a mutual friend, Eric Swanson, Habit Warrior Conference. And I was in Dallas with Glenn Morshower and some other friends, Mike Muni, and Eric says, "Hey, well, you're there. You should meet Steve Taubman." And I'm like, "Well, you mentioned his name before, so that'd be great." He says, "Well, here you go." So he connected us. We went to dinner at Caprizi's, this really cool place in Dallas, and we just had this amazing time. We spent, I don't know, a few hours together and just had a great time. Um, and Steve was just talking about his life as an entrepreneur, and as a chiropractor, and then he's a hypnotist, and he's a speaker and a trainer, and he's a magician. And I mean, you sit there and you go, all of these modalities rolled into one. This is just too flipping cool. And so we got a great chance to connect. And he's been on our Next Level by Association virtual. And this is our entrepreneur. This is entrepreneur. The difference is entrepreneur, they focus on the nuts and bolts of how to become a great entrepreneur. And so he's going to share with us today. But guys, ask if you're watching Facebook Live, go ahead and type in any question you want. We'll address it, and we'll get it handled. But guys, welcome, Dr. Steve Taubman.
Bob, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal night we spent at Caprizi's, and what you didn't mention was that we were sitting at the Jack Ruby table,
Yeah.
which was the table that Jack Ruby sat at the night before he shot Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah. Wasn't that crazy?
Little piece of history. And Jimmy, the guy who managed that restaurant, was like a tour guide. He took us all around the restaurant and showed us all this remarkable memorabilia. And then we had a chance to do a little magic and have some fun, which was cool.
Jimmy was so great. And I got to give a shout out to Eric Swanson, because one, did he arrange it, set it all up. He knew Jimmy ahead of time, but then Eric took care of the bill. That was right. Yeah, he took care of the whole meal for us. So that was just way cool. So hopefully they'll hop on and be able to see this. But Steve, you talked about becoming an entrepreneur early on, and you talked about being a chiropractor. And I've have some friends that are chiropractors, and I know some of the pitfalls of that and how it can really, one, you go into a lot of debt typically to become one, and then to open an office. So let's talk about there, because I think that a lot of people think, oh, you got a license, and now you got a degree, and now you got a business license, and you're just set to go, and you just start making in cash. I know that doesn't
happen. No. One of the things that the School of Hard Knocks has taught me is that you do need to invest in yourself, and there's no way around it. You see this often in areas like, that are kind of fringe in entrepreneurial activities like network marketing, where people think, well, I don't want to have to spend any money up front. Well, you know what? There's no such thing as being an entrepreneur and being a business person without spending money up front. You just absolutely have to do it. And you want to do it smart, and you want to do it diligently. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And, separating the direction you really need to go in from the fluff and from all the people out there trying to grab a little piece of your pie. But there's no question about it. You've got to spend money, and there are certain specific ways in which you do need to spend money. And you could, for sure, if you're coming out of school as a professional, doctor, lawyer, dentist, whatever, you're gonna be in a hole when you come out, and that's just one of the things you've got to make peace with.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are other ways to do it,
You
but
look at some of these entrepreneurs coming on. You look at the entrepreneurs coming on right now, and their their ability to get into the market is so low based on social media and so many different things we have available to us that those professionals, those doctors, those lawyers, those accountants, those coming out, they don't have it. It takes a lot to get in. So when you decided that that was what you wanted to do, you wanted to open a practice. What was the first thing you had to do, or what was the mentality that you had to have?
before I even started school, or after, as I was coming to the end of school?
Well, both probably. Yeah, let's cover both.
Well, when I went into chiropractic school, I didn't do it thinking about the money. I did it entirely thinking about the contribution. And I think most successful people, and this may not be true. I mean, there are a lot of people who are, looking to go into business specifically for the money, but I think there's certainly in the professions, I think there's a tendency for people to think, what's the contribution I want to make? What is what is it that I want to put into the world? And so that was what drove me. I was fascinated by chiropractic. I was fascinated by what it could do and how it could help people. That was enough.
Yeah.
I looked into it. I realized that it is possible to make a living, so I didn't expect I was going to fail.
Right.
But I wasn't looking at all. I mean, I definitely was unprepared for everything else I needed to learn. And trust me, they don't teach you that stuff in school.
Yes, and I've heard that over and over and over again. But you think about it, you've got I've got probably in 3 miles, I probably have 4 or 5 chiropractors in a little area. And so you're going to make this huge investment to go to school, do that. Then you're going to make this huge investment in getting an office and build outs and everything else, and then hiring a team, hiring a staff, and deal with the nightmare of that. And you're hoping to just somehow make enough money to survive the first few years and get going and build up a practice. You built up a successful practice. How did you do that?
Well, when I knew I was going to get on your show, I made a list of the top 10 things I wish I knew or did better when I ran my practice.
Love it. Let's go through those.
Yeah. So these are some of the things that kind of became clear to me in the process. And the number one thing that I wish I knew at the very beginning, and thankfully I learned it not too far into practice, only a couple of years in, was you've got to have a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
You need people who've walked that path before you.
Yeah.
And I think you were at the Habitude conference where Dan Clark spoke. And Dan is a remarkable speaker. You may not have been, but he did a great talk. He's one of the top motivational speakers in the world. Wow. And he said, if you want to live a life of significance, you must be willing to spend whatever it costs and travel whatever the distance to learn what you need to learn and to put yourself around the people who know what you need to know.
Wow. Great statement.
And, for me early in the process, and for a lot of people I coach and get the chance to stand in front of, they haven't figured that out yet. They still think, if I hold on to my money, if I hold on to my time, that means I have more money and I have more time. It sounds logical, but it's completely ass backwards, right? You've got to give it away. You've got to invest it. You've got to put it out there. You've got to be willing to do what it takes. And what it takes is to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you and who are more experienced than you. So for me, what that meant was after a couple of years of mediocrity, I joined a practice management consulting firm that put on seminars on a monthly basis. And I traveled once a month from Burlington, Vermont to Atlanta, Georgia.
Once a month.
Once a month. I'd fly down to Atlanta, Georgia. Now that added up. That was expensive.
Sure.
I was paying them a sizable fee for their expertise. But my practice doubled and tripled.
Wow.
So was it worth it? Yeah. And what was I paying? I think I was paying them something like 10% of my profits or something.
Really? Okay. So they got some skin in the game.
Right? It's huge, right? So they made a lot of money from it, but I made a lot more money from it, and it was well worth the investment. And not only what I learned, but by surrounding myself with the kinds of people that were either speaking at that conference or the people who were fellow practitioners who went to the conference and had that mindset, some of whom had been there longer than I'd been there. They dressed better than I did. They carried themselves better than I did. They had a sense of polish and panache, and they just knew what success looked like.
Mm.
Right?
Mm. I love
And
the statement. I want to say that statement again because I think we get tripped up. They made a lot of money,
yeah,
but I made a lot
more.
more. Right?
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurs get tripped up with that a lot. How much am I paying these guys? Well, how much are you making?
Who cares?
Yeah, yeah.
If
Great
if
point.
time I gave you $1, you gave me back $1.50.
Right.
I could just keep handing you dollars. You'd keep giving me 50 cents back, and I'd be rich. Right?
Right, right.
You got to get out of that mindset of hanging on to it. It's so foolish. And of course, now that I'm doing this work with Eric and I'm out there on the road and selling tickets to our conferences, I see it. I mean, I see the people who are visionary, who understand the value of coming to a conference and seizing an opportunity and taking advantage of a discount. And then I still see people who are, no matter how much you show them that they're going to end up better off having done it, they'll say, well, I can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't afford not to.
Right, right. Such a
So,
good point.
but it's so that's the first thing, is have a mentor,
Yeah.
and I think in that regard, it's helpful to, they say pick a horse, right? You can't ride two horses at the same time. Right?
Amen.
We're doing so many things in our lives. We have so many, we have a hunger to know everything. And so we're looking at it, in the spiritual world, we call it guru shopping.
Right, right.
I'm gonna learn a little bit from this one, a little bit from that one, a little bit from that one. I'm gonna learn this form of meditation, and that form of meditation, and this kind of yoga, and that kind of crystals. And I'm like dabbling in everything, but nothing is working because I'm so, my ego is very enticed by newness.
Yes, yes.
Go down, go deep, stay with something, like trust it, and work with it.
What do you think is the biggest thing leading to that? You mentioned ego. Do you think it's ego that's driving that? What's the biggest thing you have found that drives that?
Yeah, it is ego, not in the sense of like ego as in a pride, but ego as in identification with your own mind. Your mind tells you you should do this, you should do that. Your ego is is the survival mechanism that you live with. So your personality structure is built as a way of surviving in the world in a certain way, right?
Got it.
So I've developed, like, I was a neurotic kid in a dysfunctional family, and I was bullied as a child. So one of my ego structure personality traits is to develop a quick sense of humor, and and to hold people at a little bit of a distance. That's kind of part of the thing, right? And if I'm not aware of that, it can run amok.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In the same way, maybe somebody else's ego structure is I've got to protect myself. I've got to hold myself back. I've got to save my money. I've got to look at other people with suspicion, and that becomes their ego structure, right? Yeah. So whatever your ego is thinking, it's going to convince you is vitally important. I've got to keep doing this. I've got to keep thinking this way. Versus, let me step back from this a little bit. Let me, let me maybe listen to somebody else. Maybe let me take a risk and even survive through the discomfort of trying something new.
Survive through the discomfort. I like that statement. One of the things I think I see a lot with entrepreneurs, and I know you do too, where you're like you're saying, ride one horse, right? Pick a horse. You see people like they're making money doing this, and then they're like, I'm not making enough money because my sphere of influence is now already tapped into doing that. So now I'm going to switch doing this. Now I'm going to do this, and now I'm going to do this, and so now they've got 20 things that they claim to be masterful at when they're really just masterful at one, but they're good at a lot of things. And somebody said to me the other day, one of my clients, he says, Bob, but I can do that. And I'm like, yeah, I can change my oil in my car too. Doesn't mean I should. Not a good use of my time, my resources, anything else. I can do a lot of things. And I think you're hitting on one of the things. One of those things as an entrepreneur, we get excited about a lot of things, and maybe we even enjoy doing a lot of things. But as far as our income, as far as our business model, we really need to stay focused on that one. You have really created a great art, because you take your magic, you take your hypnosis, and you take all the lessons and things that you've taught and learned over the course of years, and you blended them together, and they coincide. Most of us don't have that opportunity. So what do you say to the entrepreneurs like, okay, I'm great at doing this. I love doing, but I have this other thing that I like to do too. What do you say to them?
Well, it depends. If what we're talking about is a vocation and then an avocation, I mean, I don't say, just be so single-minded that you can't enjoy something else in your life. But, um, but when it comes to the various elements of what it takes to run this business, if you find yourself like, well, I guess I'm going to build my own website, or I guess I'm going to go ahead and, collect my own testimonials, or I'm going to do, there are so many different elements within the work that you're doing that can lead you astray. And
Great.
so, in that sense, yeah, I'm a big advocate of focusing and narrowing. So, I think number one, what you do an entrepreneur, as I said, find a mentor because they'll help you
Mm-hmm.
roadmap. Number two is organize, become very, very organized so you know exactly how your time is being spent.
Mm.
Chunk it down and you could book your time so you know that if I am going to be working on some other project, I know when I'm going to be working on it so it doesn't leak into this project. So I'm very, very methodical about time. As a practitioner, you have to do that because if you're a chiropractor, you're seeing patients every 5 minutes to do an adjustment. And it's only for the patient who's new that you're going to spend an hour with them and,
Right.
work with them for a longer time. So you're very precise about time. So organizing your time is huge and finding methods and modalities that allow that is really important. But once you've done that, once you've sort of pared down, then you have to realize that you it's valuable to know how to do everything in your practice,
Mm.
right? But you shouldn't be doing everything in your practice for your
Great. Great.
so it's valuable to know how it all works. And so early on in the process, learn it all. Learn how WordPress works if so you could build a website if you had to, and learn how to make follow-up calls to your patients, and learn, whatever the elements are. But as quickly as possible, delegate those responsibilities. As
Mm.
quickly as possible, find people who are not only expert in each of those areas, but who love those
Mm.
areas.
Yeah.
People, and this is especially true for information marketers, right? We're constantly being barraged by opportunities to go out and take a class in how to do Facebook Lives, like we're doing right now, or how to do Twitter, or some other element of social media, or how to build a sales funnel or whatever. And there are so many, and I've done them all. I've
Yeah.
spent all that money, and despite the